Friends. Did I just press it? I think I did. The Let's Go Live button. So let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet. Before we go ahead and get started on this lovely Wednesday, we got to make sure the tubes are working. And it looks like they are. So let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live, the show that spotlights misconduct involving police, prosecutors, and politicians. My name is Robert Gouveia. I'm a criminal defense attorney, and today we are talking about Donald Trump and the January 6th indictment and his defense team, because they are out now. They have a new line of defense. It's called the First Amendment in the United States Constitution, and so we're going to break that down a bit. Of course, we'll get started getting caught up with all of the latest on the case. The Trump January 6th case has now been docketed. We've got a case number, CR00257. These links, of course, if you want to use any of these links, you can sign up for the links at robertgouveia.com, totally free, but you can get access to them. But we've got Jack Smith actually spoke about this. So did Merrick Garland. And the case has now been assigned. So we now know who the judge is. Her name is Tanya Sue Chutkan. Tanya Sue Chutkan. We'll learn a little bit more about her, because she is somebody who's not a fan of the J6ers. In fact, the story says that she has asked for more serious punishment than what the government was even asking for, or she's sentenced to even harsher penalties than the government. MSNBC, as per usual, goes nuts over this stuff. This guy is just, excited. I don't know what they were doing last night, but we'll share a little bit about that. Then we'll turn over to Trump and his defense team. We have a statement from the campaign. They dropped it right after the indictment. Trump also posted a bit of a short video explaining his position on this, obviously responding to it. And then we've got Trump's lawyer. His name is John Lauro, and he was on two different news shows. He was on with Fox and he was on with CNN. And I've got a big portion of the CNN interview because he was there with Kaitlin Collins. And, this whole thing is really, I think, a lot less significant than they were hoping. And this could change. They could come back with a new superseding indictment and hit him with January 6th, seditious conspiracy charges like the Oath Keepers got or like the Proud Boys got. But as it stands right now, it's like Jack Smith didn't even get the lead insurrectionist with the most serious charge. It's kind of like a big failure. Anyways, we'll get into that. Rudy Giuliani also responded to this. We know he's named as a co-conspirator in the indictment. So he holds up the indictment and actually goes through it. We'll take a look at that. And then we've got Mike Pence. Now, he has really taken a hard pivot on this thing. I'm getting irritated with his statements. He is now saying that he never had authority to do what Trump had asked him to do. And I disagree with that. Now, that might be his opinion, but opinions are not sufficient, unfortunately, for him. He's got to also be able to point to this fact in law. He keeps saying that he never had the authority to reject the votes, and I'm not sure I believe that. I think it's unsettled. It's not that he did not have it, which means it would be settled. It is that it was unsettled, and he decided that he did not have that authority. So it's his decision. It's not like it was an illegal request from Trump. Anyways, we're going to go through it because he not only posted a he posted a thread on X where he was very upset about Trump. This is going to be his new campaign, right? He's floundering in the polls. He now needs something to talk about. So he's going to be the anti-Trump, I almost got murdered by Trump candidate. So he's going all in on this. And he hit two different news stations where he called Trump's attorneys crackpots. So we're seeing a very big fissure just erupt as these two who were once on the same ticket now break apart. But I did go through, dig up a link about the Electoral Count Reform Act, which is what changed the vice presidential role into something that is now purely ministerial. It wasn't before. Now it is. Or at least it was unsettled before. Now it's settled. So we'll go through that. And then, of course, there's the Congressional Research Service, who told us back in 2016 this was a problem. If slates of electors come from two different governing bodies out of a state, in other words, from the executive branch and from the legislative branch, what happens when those competing slates of electors land on the front desk of the vice president? How's that? So we'll go through it. I think Pence is just off on that. I know why he has to say this, but it's not accurate. And this statement leads to criminal implications for Trump. So we can't let it stand, and we won't. And we'll also take a look here at Ron DeSantis, who is posting also about this, and it's kind of a weak statement there as well. So we'll get into that, see what some of the Republicans say about this, before we turn our attention to Hunter Biden. We now know that the immunity provision was exactly what we thought it was because it has been released. The diversion agreement has been posted on the court docket. And so we'll go through that along with the official copy of the plea memorandum, and we can see exactly how these two little scam documents work together. And I don't think that the defense team was very happy about this, right? You can see this is Hunter's lawyer's defense team. He's like, Your Honor, we respectfully filed a copy. Very irritated that he had to publish this for all of us to see. They wanted this to just be buried, signed, so that we couldn't scrutinize it. But, well, it's here now, and we'll take a look at it, obviously. And then, in a very, very enjoyable surprise, Devon Archer showed up with Tucker Carlson. Whoa. And they talked for like 12 minutes. And so we're going to play the whole dang thing here. You know, ordinarily you don't like to do that, but we also ordinarily don't have a Biden whistleblower who is emerging and spilling the goods. And man, Tucker is just on fire. He hasn't missed a beat. How did he get this interview, man? And out of everybody, Devon Archer just shows up on my timeline hanging out with Tucker Carlson. Man, I'm sure the White House wasn't happy about that. So we'll watch that interview. It's quite good. And it's exactly what we've been talking about here. He just confirms it all. We'd really love to hear from Representative Dan Goldman and see what, he fingered him, man. He fingered him just like the mob. You know, the mob fingers each other, you know, because this is the Biden crime family. See how that one works? All right. And so this is going to be a good one, my friends, and I'm glad that you joined us here on this lovely Wednesday to get through it all. If you would have joined us this morning, man, we had a great morning stream. We were live streaming this hearing, which is still going on right now. In fact, Bonnie from our locals is, I think, dual watching. But Arizona rancher George Allen Kelly is getting really close to trial, and the defense team there, Brenna Larkin, and there's a new lawyer on her team, did a great job today arguing a bunch of pretrial motions. Trial scheduled for right around the corner in this Arizona rancher being charged with murder. Nuts case. The defense has not even gotten the ballistics yet. And so we listened to Brenna Larkin, the defense, argue that all should be precluded. A lot of fun. We'll have the segment coming out on that later, but we're going to keep our hearts and minds out praying for Arizona rancher George Allen Kelly for that saga. Now, my friends, before we get into the meat and potatoes, of course, encourage you to check out robertgovea.com, where you can sign up for the mind map and get access to all the documents, all the video clips, everything that you see us go through here today. Just go over to robertgovea.com, click here to sign up. You can enter your email. You'll get our daily newsletter. If you also want to read instead of watch some stuff, click the reports. We have dark mode now, baby. And so we can switch off dark mode, and you can see, you can just read all the reports. These are the stories from yesterday about Hunter saying my guy and confirming that with Devon Archer and all the various stories, all at robertgovea.com. And thanks for checking it out. Also, don't forget to join up to our locals or become a member, which is where we do those lovely morning streams. We have a members only Telegram chat. We check out the daily docket and go through the presidential schedule when he's not bumming it out on the beach, calling Hunter about the weather, whatever they talk about. We have a great community. We'd love to have you join us. watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Super easy to just download the app, sign up. It's better to sign up online, but it's a great app, and we do a lot of stuff there. So come check it out. Also, we got to be healthy and properly fortified before we get into the show, because we all would love to lose some of those leftover pandemic pounds, wouldn't we? But how sick are you of all the ads for weight loss pills and fad diets? You know, we've all been there. We've all done that, and they just don't work. But you know what does? Eating 5 healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every day. Very simple process. Just a scoop, throw it in there, shake it up. It's yours. You do that, weight would probably just fall right off. But vegetables and fruit, I know, I'm not a fan. It takes a lot of time to prepare. It's a bunch of work. But you don't have to worry about that. Instead, let's talk about Field of Greens. Now, Field of Greens is a science-backed formula. Very specific fruits and vegetables you won't find in any other product. Proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so you burn calories faster and lose weight a healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand backed by a better health promise. Yes, You are going to look and feel healthier fast, but the greater proof is going to come at your next checkup when you walk into your doctor's office and he's just going to, the clipboard is going to fall right out of his hands. His jaw is going to drop. He's going to go, "Oh my gosh, you look incredible. What are you even doing here? Whatever you're doing, keep it up." And he's just going to say, ma'am, waive this person's copay. They don't even need to be here. That's how amazing it's going to be. So fieldofgreens.com. And when you get there, don't forget to use code Robert when you check out. It's a great way to be extra healthy. And let's not forget, the vegetables want to be eaten. That's why they're here, right? They're popping. Look how happy they are. Look how happy. They're like, eat me, man, eat me. All right. So fieldofgreens.com with code Robert. Now, let's get into the meat and potatoes on the day. Donald Trump draws a pretty unfortunate judge. Her name is Judge Tanya S. Chutkan. Some people on the internet on the left are calling her the J6 Punisher. Why? Because evidently she has granted harsher sentences than even the Justice Department was asking for. So in a case, the defense says, "Hi, we want the minimum." The Justice Department says, "We want the maximum." Judge Tanya S. came out and said, "You know what? We're going to give you more than the maximum." Not good. And this is taking place out of D.C. MSNBC is going nuts about it. This guy's very excited. He talks in a lot of platitudes, kind of a weird little dance I think they do on this channel that we'll take a look at. But first, I want to go through, we got official statements now from the special counsel, Jack Smith. Here is what he said with his kind of disheveled hair walking on out after the indictment was announced, telling America why this needed to happen.
Good evening. Today, an indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump with conspiring to defraud the United States, conspiring to disenfranchise voters, and conspiring and attempting to obstruct an official proceeding.
The
indictment was issued.
I didn't hear seditious conspiracy in there, and I didn't hear insurrection, which is strange because the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers both got convicted of seditious conspiracy. And the Justice Department that was prosecuting them was not the special counsel. And so the lunatic prosecutors in Merrick Garland's office thought that there was enough probable cause there to go charge a ton of people with seditious conspiracy. But he didn't charge Trump with that. So who's off on this? Now, of course, there's the possibility that the seditious conspiracy charges come at a later date via a superseding indictment, but they're not here right now. And if the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers were going to overtake the country, their leader was therefore Donald Trump. And if this guy doesn't find that there's enough probable cause for Trump to be the leader of a seditious conspiracy, why are the other Proud Boys and Oath Keepers sitting in custody with the top level charge being seditious conspiracy? Why is Stuart Rhodes, the Oath Keeper, former, going to prison for 18 years for seditious conspiracy and the other charges that he's been charged with? If the special counsel can't even find enough cause to say that the leader is not even at that status. And so it sounds like the independent special counsel has concluded there is no seditious conspiracy. Therefore, the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, that top line charge should be dismissed immediately, and they should be brought forward on new trials.
By a grand jury of citizens here in the District of Columbia, and it sets forth the crimes charged in detail. I encourage everyone to read it in full.
We did.
The attack on our nation's capital on January 6th, 2021, was an unprecedented assault on the seat of American democracy. As described in the indictment, it was fueled by lies. Lies by the defendant targeted at obstructing a bedrock function of the U.S. government, the nation's process of collecting, counting, and certifying the results of the presidential election. The men and women of law enforcement who defended the U.S. Capitol on January 6th are heroes. They are patriots and they are the very best of us. They did not just defend a building or the people sheltering in it. They put their lives on the line to defend who we are as a country and as a people.
And that was all led by Trump, so you're going to charge him with seditious conspiracy, or what?
They defended the very institutions and principles that define the United States. Since the attack on our Capitol, the Department of Justice has remained committed to ensuring accountability for those criminally responsible for what happened that day. This case is brought consistent with that commitment, and our investigation of other individuals continues. In this case, my office will seek a speedy trial so that our evidence can be tested in court and judged by a jury of citizens. In the meantime, I must emphasize that the indictment is only an allegation and that the defendant must be presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. I would like to thank the members of the Federal Bureau of Investigation who are working on this investigation with my office, as well as the many career prosecutors and law enforcement agents from around the country who have worked on previous January 6th investigations. These women and men are public servants of the very highest order, and it is a privilege to work alongside them. Thank you.
All right, very bland statement. He looks a little bit rough there. You know, if you put him in a lineup like with Hunter, you know, if somebody like, if there was a 911 call and somebody called and says that they heard a hooker being beaten in a motel, and they put pictures of Hunter and Jack Smith together, they'd be pretty close, wouldn't they? They'd be pretty close. You'd be like, I could have been one of the two of them. I'm not real sure. But the point here, in aside, you know, as an aside from that, he looks like, you know, typical schleb prosecutor. He is not giving us much new here, other than just saying he's very upset about January 6th. Now, when we read through the indictment in full yesterday, we were a little bit confused about what the actual criminal conduct was, because it was a big, long screed about Arizona, Michigan, and all Georgia, all the other states. But what was the conduct? We know that if you get charged with the DUI, it's pretty easy. You've got the elements of the law: actual physical control of motor vehicle, blood alcohol content over the statutory limit, impaired to the slightest degree, all the things. And you just go down the list. Okay, when did it happen? What was the specific conduct? Okay, it was this call. It was this credit card transaction. I shouldn't have fraudulently done that. I shouldn't have left the point of sale and walked out the door. We know. But what was the conduct here? It was a bunch of phone calls, and some of them seemed worse than others, and Mike Pence had his notes taken in, and okay, what is it? Because if it is that broad, well, then that's a big problem for them, because my goodness, we could charge anybody on that basis. I mean, if the law is stretched out so wide that you could drive a truck through it, that's not a real solid case, unless they're not really interested in justice. They just want to throw charges and get something to stick. Now, Merrick Garland, who runs the DOJ, who is also an individual who doesn't talk at all, comes out and just drops on the curb a 45-second statement. Here he is.
January 6th, attack on our democracy. Career men and women of the Justice Department engaged in what has become the largest investigation in our history.
The largest investigation in United States history is this. Now, I have to always pause when they say this type of garbage and just remind us that it is absolute nonsense. Okay, there have been just over 1,000 people who have been charged out of January 6th. Look at a Super Bowl when it comes through your town and the number of criminal charges that will pop up. It's more than 1,000. Okay, so 1,000 charges, and half of those have already been resolved by plea deals. And the other half of those, or half of the remainder, are nonviolent, right? They're pretty benign types of charges, and they're just still gobbling people up. So it is a joke. If this is the biggest criminal investigation of our Department of Justice, they should be embarrassed, because it's like a joke. They have thousands of employees, thousands of lawyers all over this country. And this was it? So just think about it, right? If you have 1,000 cases that have been charged, how many lawyers are assigned on this case, on these cases? What do you think? It's 100? So it's 100 lawyers, probably, maybe. So that means 100 lawyers have 10 cases each. That's like nuts, right? Any lawyer would tell you that's what they've got 10 cases. What are they? Is this a joke? So if they have more than 100 lawyers, which I would imagine they do, 100 licensed people working on 1,000 cases, it might be one lawyer to one case. I don't know what the official numbers are because they haven't officially told us. But it is a joke. The numbers they just don't add up, but they keep saying this.
In November last, I appointed Jack Smith, a special counsel, to take on the ongoing investigation in order to underline the department's commitment to accountability and independence. Mr. Smith and his team of experienced, principled, career agents and prosecutors have followed the facts and the law wherever they lead. Any questions about this matter will have to be answered by the filings made.
National, are you concerned about this affecting the 2020?
I think he basically just says that every morning he wakes up. It's just the thing that he says. It's not even that different from what he says any other time. So that is Merrick Garland and Jack Smith giving us the update. Now let's learn a little bit more about this judge, Judge Tanya S. Chutkan. The AP gave us a little bit of an update on this. They said that the judge assigned randomly to Trump's January 6th case is a tough punisher of the Capitol rioters. You're kidding! Isn't that convenient? She has stood out as one of the toughest, in fact, one of the toughest punishers of rioters who stormed the Capitol in an attack fueled by Trump's baseless claims of a stolen election. She's also ruled against Trump before. Her name is Judge Tanya Chutkan, former assistant public defender who was nominated to the bench by Obama. She's going to oversee the case accusing Trump of trying to overturn 2020. Chutkan has handed down prison sentences in riot cases, look, that are harsher than DOJ prosecutors even recommended. She's also ruled against Trump in another January 6th case. She refused to block the release of documents that the January 6th committee was trying to get by saying that Trump had executive privilege. So Trump says, you don't get my documents because I'm the president or the former president, and I have executive privilege. Trump, Judge, you certainly recognize that, don't you? She says no, waives it, violates it. The other judges have violated attorney-client privilege. And so now she basically cracks the shell that enables the DOJ to go conduct their prosecution, and then they just bring it right back into her court. She's like, oh, perfect. I gave you exactly what you needed. Bring it on back to me. They did. Now you see, it says she rejected Trump's arguments that he could hold privilege over his documents when he was in post-presidency. Biden cleared the way for the National Archives to turn the papers over. She said that Trump couldn't claim that his privilege exists in perpetuity. She said presidents are not kings and Trump is not president. Trump will make his first court appearance on Thursday before the judge. This is going to be in front of a different judge, and we learned how to pronounce the name, Makshila Upadhyay. I think that's probably not right, but we tried. Such judges handle initial matters in federal cases. You can see this is Judge Chutkan, appointed by Obama. Judge has sentenced at least 38 people convicted of the Capitol riot-related crimes. All 38 went to prison. Wow. 38 of 38 convicted of Capitol riot-related crimes. All of them went to prison. 10 days to 5 years. So this is a January 6th case. How can Trump not go to prison on this? I'm shocked how Trump was not charged with seditious conspiracy on this, and that they're not going to ask for 18 years. It's almost like they've been a bunch of liars and hyperbloviating to us over the last several years. But other people are sitting in jail right now for seditious conspiracy. But Jack Smith didn't think there was enough here to charge Trump. So she just sends everybody to prison because it's an attack on the Capitol. She's one of at least 2 judges out of D.C. who collectively have sentenced nearly 600 defendants. More than 1/3 of them, except hers, avoided sentences that included incarceration. Other judges have typically handed down sentences that are more lenient. Chutkan, however, has matched or exceeded their recommendations in 19 of her 38 sentences. In 4 of those, prosecutors weren't seeking any jail time at all, but she gave them jail. the government says, no, just probation's fine. And she says, no, probation's not fine. This guy's an insurrectionist. Jail for him. Chutkan says prison can be a powerful deterrent against the threat of another insurrection. Seems like she's already presumed that that's been proven. She said in December, every day we're hearing about reports of anti-democratic factions of people plotting violence. The potential threat of violence in 2024. Oh, great. This is concerning. Now, I have a hard time believing that she keeps Trump in custody or does anything like that because it would just be lunacy. But it will illustrate the massive double standard that exists here. If she doesn't hold Trump in custody, but everybody else she held in custody, isn't that going to kind of expose her massive hypocrisy or her double standard that she's giving Trump a benefit of the doubt? My point is, Trump, of course, should not be held in custody, and neither should the other seditious conspirators who were never involved in any seditious conspiracy whatsoever. So if there's a silver lining in this prosecution, it is going to be that it exposes the absolute absurdity of all of their charges and allegations to this point. They've been telling us that these were seditious conspirators. Well, where's the seditious conspirator charge for Trump? So is she going to do the same thing? I mean, if this is such a dangerous insurrection, is she going to hold Trump in custody? She sure talks a big game about this, the potential threat of violence in 2024. Well, now the biggest threat, according to these people, is going to be in her courtroom. What's she going to do about it? She said in December, before sentencing a Florida man to more than 5 years, at the time that sentence was the longest for a January 6th case, 5 years. She said it had to be made clear that trying to violently overthrow the government, trying to stop the peaceful transition of power, and assaulting law enforcement officers is going to be met with absolute certain punishment. Trevor McFadden, a Trump nominee, suggested that she was being too hard on those people compared to other people like who got arrested during George Floyd's Summer of Love. Chutkan criticized him, said people gathered all over the country during the Summer of Love to protest the violent murder by unarmed police officers. Oh, gosh. Some of those protesters became violent, she said. That's almost, look, literally, just change that around. People gathered all over the country last year to protest the stolen election by a group of political thugs. Some of those protesters became violent. Same thing. But her side gets an excuse. The other side doesn't. But to compare the actions of people protesting mostly peacefully to a violent mob to overthrow the country ignores the very real danger. All right. So we now know that Trump is going to be appearing on Thursday before a magistrate judge, not that judge. So magistrate judge, I'm going to guess, is not going to hold him in custody because that would be a nuts thing to do. And then Judge Chutkan's not going to have to make that decision. But it does beg the question, well, if the lead insurrectionist that these people have been screaming at us about all this time is going to walk out of custody, why are the others being held? So MSNBC has been celebrating this. These people are just gleeful with almost this bloodlust. And I wanted to share this very interesting little performance from this fella. And I think he probably worked hard on this. You see this giant stack of papers here, reading this, memorizing this. Rachel Maddow has that sort of a pinched lip look, like she's very somber as well. And she's going to be looking at him as he delivers this thing. And he's just going to come out here and just belt this out of the park for us. Now, you know, sometimes I know here we can get a little bit platitude-y and sometimes start talking in very fluffy language, but this is like a 10 for 10 on that. He brings up Lincoln and all sorts of stuff. I don't even really know what he's talking about, but here it is.
Well, my first reaction, which is just a personal one, and having covered this, I think, you know, like all of us have, and many of the viewers are in the weeds of it too, is like, right, yes, I'm not crazy.
You are, yeah,
like,
you are, yeah.
If this wasn't a crime, nothing is a crime. We watched him do it on television. We sat at this desk a year ago at the January 6th committee. We knew what he was doing. If that is not a crime, then nothing is a crime. So that part of it is just like, I find really important and gratifying. I mean, there's a kind of ballast to it.
A ballast?
Yes, of course, this was corrupt. Of course, this was fraud.
Yeah, he's feeling very ballast. He's got a ballast feeling somewhere in his body. He's stabilized now because this indictment is finally hit. And he thought he was crazy for all of these years. Now he's not that crazy. Now, I think he is still a little bit crazy because I think this entire panel up here has been screaming at us that this guy was a seditious conspirator, but he has not been charged with seditious conspiracy. So I wonder what, do they feel like like total losers? I mean, they were telling us that all this was going to happen, and then it didn't happen. Does Jack Smith feel like a failure? Why aren't these people calling him out for not delivering their prime charge?
Yes, of course, this was corrupt. Of course, this was fraud. Of course, it was a conspiracy to defraud the U.S. We all saw him engage in the conspiracy to defraud the U.S.
Yeah.
The second thought I had is just about the magnitude of this moment, which I think is just worth taking a second on. I mean,
floor is yours.
with Donald Trump, lots of things are unprecedented. The first time he was indicted was unprecedented, and the second time he was indicted was unprecedented because of the federal indictment had never come down.
Yeah, and the third time's unprecedented, and the fourth time's going to be unprecedented. And the first superseding indictment was unprecedented, and the second superseding indictment is going to be unprecedented. Meaning it doesn't mean anything anymore. It's all kind of been made to be irrelevant because you just keep going back to the well.
This is in the canon of American events, January 6th and its aftermath. And the reason is that for 159 years after the cannons fire in Fort Sumter, there is an unbroken chain of peaceful transfer of power. Yeah. And not only that, the core story of the American experiment is a fight within itself to be true to the radical promise of democracy.
Rile it up.
That is why Lincoln says at the battlefield at Gettysburg that the question before the nation is whether a nation of, by, and for the people can long endure. It is a test whether the thing can last.
Yes, louder.
And that's in a category of itself in American history, the Civil War and the death and misery. But this is the gravest political crime since secession. Wow. And the gravest test that Lincoln called on the battlefield at Gettysburg of whether a nation of, by, and for the people, that we are our own masters.
Wow.
Whether that can long endure. So I feel profoundly gratified by reading this document because it calls the question in a way that it has not quite been called yet.
Yeah, we can tell you're also very gratified over there. You've been waiting for this day to come, and I'm a little bit concerned that it's not exactly what you were hoping for. I mean, you've all been saying it was going to be insurrection, sedition. None of those charges made it to the top line, so I don't know what you're so excited about. To me, it seems like a total failure, and the charges are a total mismatch of basically a ranting screed from a prosecutor, almost like this whole thing was written by Liz Cheney or something. So it's more of the same, more political prosecution. We're going to be landing in front of the same judge who looks at the BLM riots and says those were okay because they were favored, but this is a disfavored defendant. And Judge Tanya Chutkan will get this case soon. We'll continue to cover, my friends. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this as we continue to cover. All right, now, Trump and his team respond. Trump and his defense lawyers hit back against the narrative from Jack Smith. In light of this new January 6th indictment, we see a new player enter the game. Trump's lawyer is named John Lauro, who appeared on two media networks, including Fox and CNN, to defend the president against these charges, saying that there is a long history of First Amendment protections that immunize and exonerate Trump against these charges. But Trump's campaign also posted a statement. Here's what they said. They wrote, "This is nothing more than the latest corrupt chapter in the continued pathetic attempt by the Biden crime family and their weaponized DOJ to interfere with 2024, in which Trump is the undisputed frontrunner, leading by substantial margins." They say, but why did they wait 2.5 years to bring these fake charges? Right in the middle of President Trump's winning campaign for 2024. Why was it announced the day after the big, crooked Joe Biden scandal broke out from the halls of Congress? Very interesting pattern people are noticing. You know, it's like every time there's bad news for Biden, we wake up the next morning, there's bad news for Trump. Oh, Devon Archer testifies in front of Congress, we wake up, Trump's indicted. We have the whistleblowers come out, Trump gets a superseding indictment. It's just never ending. Trump says the answer is election interference. The lawlessness of these persecutions of President Trump and his supporters is reminiscent of Nazi Germany in the 1930s, he says, the former Soviet Union and other authoritarian dictatorial regimes. President Trump has always followed the law and the Constitution with advice from many highly accomplished attorneys. And this was a point we made when we read the indictment yesterday. 4 of the other co-conspirators were licensed attorneys. Trump was listening to advice of counsel. They may disagree with the advice, but that doesn't automatically make it illegal. These un-American witch hunts will fail, says Trump. And the President Trump will be reelected to the White House so he can save our country from the abuse, incompetence, and corruption that is running through the veins of our country at levels never seen before. 3 years ago, we had strong borders, energy independence, no inflation, and a great economy. Today, we're a nation in decline. President Trump will not be deterred by disgraceful and unprecedented political targeting from the Trump campaign. Now, Trump also posted a video. This came over via Nick Sorter on Twitter, and here's what Trump said.
Country is in a very dark place right now. But even after everything the deep state has done to me, I will never give up on America. Mark my words. In 2024, we will win back the White House. We will make America great again. I have no doubt about it. They come at me from left. They come at me from right. The rhinos, the communists, the Marxists, the fascists. We will not only survive, we will be stronger than ever before. We're fighting a fight like nobody ever thought possible, and we're winning. We won in 2016. We had a rigged election in 2020, but got more votes than any sitting president. We're going to win like never before, and we're going to make America great again. I can truly say, I believe, better than ever before. Thank you for all of your support and for all of your prayers.
Right on. So that's Trump sounding good, looking good, saying we're going to continue to march forward. Any of this nonsense is not going to be a deterrent. And Trump's lawyers are also hitting the airwaves. I've got 2 clips here from Jonathan Lauro. He showed up on Fox News and he had this conversation.
So what Mr. Trump did was exactly constitutionally precise and in order. There was nothing illegal about that, and he was required to take steps as President of the United States to ensure that that election was held in a valid way. All of that now is being criminalized. The one thing I will say, though, in 2020, Mr. Trump's campaign had a few weeks to gear up and present evidence, and it was very difficult. We now have the ability in this case to issue our own subpoenas, and we will relitigate every single issue in the 2020 election in the context of this litigation. It gives President Trump an opportunity that he has never had before, which is to have subpoena power since January 6th in a way that can be exercised in federal court.
But what you're talking about,
It is going to be a possibility. I don't know how much leeway they're going to have with this because the judge is the judge, Judge Sue Chutkan. We just went through that and learned about what she thinks about Trump and the J6ers, and it's not much. So she's going to do what she can to limit this thing. And we saw this predicament pop up in the Proud Boys trial. The Proud Boys defense attorneys wanted to show that there were a bunch of federal informants in the crowd that instigated the whole thing. And they said, well, what did those federal informants over there and over there and over there and over there have to do with your client over here? And they, well, he did this here and he went in here and he did this. So it's irrelevant. And they said, well, it's just, and the defense said, well, it's part of the totality of everything. I mean, the whole thing wouldn't have happened but for the feds. And so when Trump tries to go and get access to the undercovers or goes to try to peel the layers back in Georgia or what happened in Arizona, because they're all listed in there, he can have conversations. We know Rusty Bowers from Arizona went and testified in front of Jack Smith. So he certainly will be able to get into this and cross-examine and interview and do all the things. But at this point, the judge is, in my opinion, going to limit this as much as possible. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that they do have free reign to do all of it, but we have seen how this works out of D.C.
the states did that. Each individual state certified the elections. They were signed by the governors, many of them Republican governors, and many of them Republican secretaries of state that signed off and certified those election results before they came to Washington, D.C., and we had what was January 6th. So what you're talking about was done. It was certified.
No, I'm sorry, but you're missing what Professor East Eastman's advice was. Professor Eastman said that the state legislatures had not opined and weighed in on the changes that had been done in those various states. And what they've really done is invited now a relitigation of 2020, but this time in a criminal court, which is unprecedented. No sitting president has ever been criminally charged for his views, for taking a position. And by the way, is there any doubt there's two systems of justice in the United States? Was Hillary Clinton prosecuted for the Russian hoax? Were those individuals who said, don't worry about the Biden laptop because it's just Russian disinformation? Are they?
No, a lot of people have not been prosecuted. In fact, why didn't they prosecute Al Gore when he thought that he won? I mean, he obviously didn't win against Bush, but he said he did, and they were going to fight and blah, 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 all that stuff. What about all of the Democrats, 20-something minutes of them screaming about Trump stealing the election from them? We had Jamie Raskin, who was objecting on the floor of the House. Why has he not been investigated? They cry foul. Hillary Clinton, too. I won an election. She hems and haws about it all the time. But no, they're not going to prosecute these people. And they're going to say that the states certified the elections. But we're going to revisit this because the issue is about what happens when you have two competing branches in a state that have a difference of opinion. What happens when the state legislature says one thing, but the executive branch says another thing? When the Secretary of State and the governors change the election rules because COVID, they do it outside of the context of the legislature, which has full authority to make those changes. And when the Secretary of State certifies their electors and the legislature says, you did it in violation of the rules because we didn't endorse those things, we now have two competing legitimate entities that are proposing alternative outcomes. What happens when that lands in front of Congress? That's what we're talking about. And that's the argument that Eastman was creating. We'll come back to that. Now, Lauro also showed up on CNN and had an interesting conversation with Kaitlin Collins explaining and defending the president.
Well, those are secretaries of state who were making those changes in those states because of the pandemic that was happening. You talk about free speech.
But also outside of permission of the legislature. And the Constitution says the legislatures, the state legislatures, conduct the elections, not the Secretary of States and COVID.
Jack Smith noted Trump's right to free speech and to contest the election results. But what he says in this indictment is that when that did not work, the defendant, your client, pursued unlawful means of discounting legitimate votes and subverting the election results, and that is why he is being charged here, not because of anything related to free speech.
Yeah, but that's factually inaccurate because the ultimate request that Mr. Trump made to Vice President Pence was pause the vote counting, allow the states to weigh in ultimately and audit or recertify. And under Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2, the actual responsibility for qualifying electors is in the state legislatures.
Yeah.
Mr. Trump had the advice of counsel, Mr. Eastman, who was one of the most respected constitutional scholars in the United States, giving him advice and guidance. That's pure politics. You may disagree with it, and people have spirited arguments about the law all the time, and that's why lawyers are in business. But we've never had a situation where a spirited debate about the Constitution has become a criminal case. What's going to happen when there's a Republican administration? Is there going to be an effort to criminalize speech by Democrats?
Only
against Democrats. Is there going to be an effort to characterize something that a Democrat politician says that's not
all of them.
That doesn't meet some kind of truth standard at the Department of Justice?
Handcuffs.
That that's going to be the subject of a criminal indictment?
Round them up.
We've now entered a constitutional abyss as a result of this indictment.
But John, I should note that you're saying that he was just asking him to send them back. No, I was just talking to the chief of staff who was with Pence that day. He said he was being asked to do something illegal that Pence did not have the right to do, to reject him.
We're going to talk about that.
And you mentioned the attorneys there.
We're going to come back on that one. Pence keeps saying that. He comes to this legal conclusion like, I didn't have that legal authority to do that. That's not true. They changed the Electoral Count Act in 2022 to fill that gap, to close that hole, because Pence did have it back then in 2020.
that you say John Eastman, he's a co-conspirator in this indictment. I should note, in the indictment lists all of the people who told Trump that his claims about election fraud weren't true, including the vice president, senior Justice Department leaders, the Director of National Intelligence, CISA, which of course is in charge of making sure elections in the U.S. are secure.
She's like, oh, they also signed a letter too. 51 of them signed a letter and they gave it to him and he still rejected it. Yeah, take your letter and shove it.
Senior White House attorneys, campaign staffers, state legislators that you just mentioned there in the courts.
Right. What was not true? That there were states where ballots were sent out without people asking for them, where there were changes in verification, where there were instances where ballots were not being supervised at drop-off places. The president was told, given advice that under these circumstances, the state legislatures have the ultimate ability to qualify electors. He followed that advice. Now, you may disagree as to whether or not those things actually occurred or not.
A lot of other people might too.
That's why we have political debate. We don't have criminal trials over that. We have the discussion like we're just having.
But it matters if those things actually occurred or not, John.
Not under the First Amendment.
It matters if those things actually occurred because...
Not at all, because under the First Amendment...
It does matter if there's actually fraud.
No, the First Amendment allows...
But John, let me stop you there, because if he's saying that there was fraud, the First Amendment doesn't allow the President of the United States to go and claim there was fraud when he was told there was not fraud and then try to subvert the election by overturning legitimate electors. I mean, it says it right here in the actual indictment.
Absolutely. The First Amendment protects all
it's his opinion.
If we're going to have a situation where the Department of Justice is going to fact check politicians
and charge them with
and
crimes?
indict politicians for political speech and whether or not they're factually accurate, then this country will shut down politically, because it's a never-ending cycle of tit for tat. And that's the risk of injecting politics into the criminal justice.
By her own standard, she says if they just say that there's fraud and there's no fraud, well, then they can't say that and we have to prosecute them. And that's like literally every politician's sentence out of their mouths every day. They tell us something, it's not true, we find out it's true, and nobody gets indicted for it. And so it's about differences of opinions, and the reason is because it's a difference of opinion. They say, no, our gas prices are coming down. No, they're not. Are you going to indict them for that?
Justice system. So right now, people disagree with President Trump. What's going to happen 4 years from now if somebody disagrees with President Biden in terms of what he said during the election?
Yes.
That's why we don't criminalize political speech. Political speech under the First Amendment has an almost absolute protection. Nobody gets to judge whether it's true or not, except the American people. And we do that in an election. We do that in an election. We do that in the case of a president by impeachment, but we don't indict people for speech.
I got to stop you there. But Trump is not being indicted for lying here. He is being indicted for using unlawful means of discounting legitimate votes and trying to subvert the election results.
What does that mean? That's not a criminal charge. I mean, that's not the charge we saw.
Well, what's the unlawful means? There was an effort to get alternate electors.
He was trying to overturn
which is a protocol
fake electors who were not legitimate.
Going through the process.
That was used in 1960 by John Kennedy. And it was a protocol that was constitutionally accepted. So there's nothing wrong about that. In fact, in the indictment itself, it doesn't allege that there was anything wrong. And the final ask that Mr. Trump made to Vice President Pence was simply pause the voting. There's nothing inherently unconstitutional or illegal about that. In fact, he had an opinion from a very well-known constitutional scholar that said that's fine, that that's legal. Mr. Trump is not a lawyer. He's a businessman.
His own attorney general and officials said that was not fine, that was certainly illegal that he was asking. And they weren't just asking for a pause. He was asking to overturn the legitimate results. But John, let me ask you, because you're running point on this. Is Trump going to show up in person?
He was asked.
Let me ask you this. Is Trump going to show up in person for his arraignment on Thursday?
That's up to the court. You know, the court makes those decisions. So we're prepared to follow whatever the court rules are.
John,
the judge issued a summons, and he will appear either virtually or in person.
Okay, so it's not clear if it's virtually or in person. But one thing to get back to there, he's not just asking for a pause. Your client...
No, you have to look at his last...
John, your client is on tape.
What he said. You have to look at what he said at the ellipse. Have you read the ellipse speech?
John, you got to let me finish my point here. Your client, John,
when you look
is
at the
on
ellipse
tape
speech,
with
that's exactly what he said.
The Secretary of State of the state of Georgia John, you got to let me finish my point here. I'm letting you finish your point.
Absolutely.
Your
Go
client
ahead.
is on tape with the Secretary of State from the state of Georgia asking him to find him one more vote than he would need to win the state. That's not asking for a pause. He's asking for votes that he did not get in that election.
He was asking for the Secretary of State to identify votes that were not counted properly and factor that in. And by the way,
Which is totally legal.
discussion took place with dozens of people on a phone call with lawyers involved, and no one was suggesting doing anything
every
illegal.
election.
And no one during that call said, Mr. President, that's beyond the bounds. This is politics. This indictment is about pure politics. We engage in vigorous debate in this country about politics. What we don't do is criminalize political speech.
We do now.
This indictment is a game changer. It's the first time that we've taken political speech and said, we're going to criminalize it by the party that's in control against the party that's contesting the next election, where the two individuals involved are going to be running for office.
Yep.
That is an incredible set of circumstances.
Yep, and they all just keep excusing it like it's nothing.
John, if you believe that you have a good defense here for your client, do you believe that this trial should happen before the 2024 election?
It should not interfere with the election, but really what the indictment has done is identify 7 states
But should it happen before the election?
where there were irregularities. I need to look at what so-called evidence is going to be presented. I could see this trial lasting 9 months or a year.
Yeah,
but it's
going to
take, Mr. Trump is entitled to a defense. The government has had 3 years to investigate this, and now they want to rush this to trial
Right
in the
during the
middle of a
election.
political season. What does that tell you?
That they're
We
corrupt
deserve
hacks.
as much time as any American citizen to defend on these issues as anyone else. And for the government to have 3 years to do it and then expect us to do it in 3 weeks or 4 weeks is just ridiculous. Every single person in the United States is entitled to due process, including the former president.
Okay,
And we'll
John.
see if the judge gives it to them. John Lauro, very good job. I thought that was excellent with Kaitlin Collins. She did not like that at all. And they're having a hard time defining what they're so upset about. You know, they keep using these giant platitudes. Well, he undermined the election, interfere. Well, I know, but what specific conduct? He's got 4 charges in there. You got to define it very, very clearly. And he put it 45 pages. And a lot of that stuff is protected speech, if not all of it. So what is he going to do? Jack Smith going to continue march forward, and Trump is going to have him and his day in court, and maybe other co-conspirators maybe joining him as well. One co-conspirator is Rudy Giuliani, and he got a copy of the indictment. He was very unhappy with it.
And I guess you have to be careful what you say. He still is the special investigator, the special prosecutor.
I
kind of holds, yours and others' future. Go ahead.
Long ago stopped being careful, and I don't worry about the Jack Smiths of this world. I have a chapter in my book called Stand Up to Bullies. So here's what I say to Jack Smith. After the Supreme Court threw out your case, which should have been a disgrace, and you should have gone and found another profession because you don't belong in this one. This one will be your legacy, violating the right of free speech of an American citizen. Never mind whether he was president or not. It could be anybody. It could be a homeless person. You don't get to violate people's First Amendment rights, Smith. No matter who the hell you are, or no matter how sick you are with Trump derangement syndrome.
Get him, Rudy.
And this isn't the first time you've acted like an unethical lawyer. It should be the last.
Yeah, get him, Rudy. Yeah, man. So slam that indictment down, because this is going to be a long road ahead, and we're going to see some very interesting constitutional arguments and how this goes. We'll know more about it on Thursday when the judge conducts the arraignment. And my friends, we'll continue to cover. Thank you for subscribing and following along wherever you're watching this as we continue to cover. All right, now, let's talk about this fella. Not very happy with this fella. Why is Mike Pence continuing to be dishonest about his power? When he was vice president, he was in the Senate counting the electoral votes, and he said that he didn't have the power to reject them. He's saying that that is a definitive position, that I didn't have the authority, and now he's slamming Trump about it on the heels of the January 6th indictment. In fact, he's going all in. Mike Pence has had a difficult time in his campaign thus far, and so now he's making a hard pivot, and this is what he said in response to the indictment. He says, today's indictment serves as an important reminder. Anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. He says, I'll have more to say about the government's case in which he testified after reviewing the indictment. The former president is entitled to the presumption of innocence, but with this indictment, his candidacy means more talk about J6 and more distractions. He says, as Americans, his candidacy means less attention paid to Joe Biden's disastrous economic policies, which is, I think that's just like a talking point that they just send out to all the GOP people, afflicting millions across the United States, and to the pattern of corruption with Hunter. Our country is more important than one man. Our Constitution is more important than any one man's career. On January 6, former President Trump demanded that I choose between him and the Constitution. I chose the Constitution, and I always will. As your president, I will not yield an inch in defending America, our people. I promise you, I will do so consistent with my oath to the Constitution and bring real solutions to this nation. Now, he has been saying that he never had the authority to reject the electoral votes when they landed in front of him back on January 6th. And he's out here hitting the media talking about this in several different ways, using very colorful language, including calling the attorneys who brought forward the alternative theory with the alternative electors, calls them crackpots.
And irrespective of the indictment, I want the American people to know that I had no right to overturn the election.
We're going to come back to that. I had no right to overturn the election. First of all, nobody's asking that you overturn the election. That wasn't the question. It's a false premise. He's starting this off on the wrong foot. That's not what anybody was asking for.
And then on that day, President Trump asked me to put him over the Constitution, but I chose the Constitution.
Also, not anything that's been proven. It's his opinion that he could not do this, but it is not settled. I'm going to show us why.
And I always will. And I really do believe that anyone who puts themselves over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. And anyone who asks someone else to put themselves over the Constitution should never be president of the United States again. I've been very forthright about this issue, and I'll continue to be. Now, with regard to the substance of the indictment, I've been very clear. I had hoped it wouldn't come to this. I had hoped that this issue and the judgment of the president's actions that day would be left to the American people. But now it's been brought in a criminal indictment, and I can't assess whether or not the government has the evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt what they assert in the indictment. And the president's entitled to a presumption of innocence. But for my part, I want people to know that I had no right to overturn the election. And that what the president maintained that day, and frankly has said over and over again over the last 2.5 years, is completely false.
That is not accurate. We're going to break this down. I've got Congressional Research Service documents, and I've got the Electoral Count Reform Act of 2022 that say differently.
And it's contrary to what our Constitution and the laws of this country provide. You know, I'm a student of American history.
Not really.
And the first time I heard in early December somebody suggest that as vice president I might be able to decide which votes to reject and which to accept, I knew that it was false. Our founders had just won a war against a king. And the last thing they would have done was vest unilateral authority in any one person to decide who would be the next president. I dismissed it out of hand.
They didn't argue that you got to pick the next president, Mike.
Sadly, the president was surrounded by a group of crackpot lawyers.
Whoa!
That kept telling him what his itching ears wanted to hear.
Whoa!
And while I made my case to him of what I understood my oath to the Constitution,
that's different.
Require the president ultimately, continue to demand that I choose him over the Constitution. And so in this,
all right, demand that he chooses Trump over the Constitution. I don't like this framing at all. He did it again when he was over on Fox. This one's a little shorter.
I was clear on that throughout. I was clear with President Trump throughout, all the way up to the morning of January 6th. But let's be clear on this point. It wasn't just that they asked for a pause. The president specifically asked me, and his gaggle of crackpot lawyers asked me to literally reject votes, which would have resulted.
Okay, so that's different than what you said about overturning the election.
In in the issue being turned over to the House of Representatives,
Okay.
and literally chaos would have ensued. So,
Not really. It's happened before.
Martha, I just people can read the indictment, and frankly, I've said before, I had hoped it had not come to this point. You know, I don't know if the government can meet the standard, the burden of proof beyond reasonable doubt for criminal charges, but the American people deserve to know that President Trump and his advisors didn't just ask me to pause. They asked me to reject votes, return votes, essentially to overturn the election, and
There
to
it
keep
goes.
faith with the oath that I made to the American people
Now
and
his
to
language
Almighty
is
God.
changing, yeah.
I rejected that out of hand, and I did my duty that day.
All right, so Mike Pence is changing his language a little bit, even between those two interviews. And I think it's the same day. So he's on CNN, language changes, Fox News, he tightens it up a little bit. But here's the point. In 2016, the Congressional Research Service drafted this document for us. 2016, long before 2020. They say, hey, this is how we count electoral votes. It's a big process, a lot of complicated things happening here. An overview of all the things and how this works. Now, we read this long time ago on this channel before the election took place. And there's one provision in here, one section that's very important. The receipt of two certificates from the same state. Oh, what happens when that happens? What happens when the state legislature that governs how elections work pursuant to the United States Constitution, what happens when they have a difference of opinion than what the executive branch did when they changed the election rules based on COVID? Executive branch comes up with a conclusion. They say, this is how the election went. The legislative branch, a co-equal branch of government, by the way, they decide something else happened. And the legislative branch is arguably more representative than the executive branch because they've got individual legislatures which connect to the population. If you have two competing certificates from the same state, there's a process that we go through. Is it very simple? Is it ministerial, like Mike Pence says, where all he does is just rubber stamp everything? No, the answer is no, obviously. It's complicated. And if you go through all of this, they talk about objections to the counting of electoral votes, the procedures for considering the objections, the basis for the objections, and the receipt of two certificates from the same state. This was drafted by CRS, right? This is not John Eastman. This is a government bureaucracy. And they tell us it's not that cut and dry. Influenced by historical experience, Congress was concerned in a new statute that two electors could be presented to Congress from the same state, two different electors. And three different contingencies appear to be provided in the statute. What do we do? In the first instance, two lists would be proffered, but the assumption is that only one list would be from electors and that only those should be counted if they were legitimate. In the second case, when two lists were being from two different state authorities who arguably made determinations under the law, the question is, which state authority is the lawful tribunal of the state? Do we take the legislative electors or do we take the executive electors? And so it says to make the decision shall be decided upon the concurrent agreement of both houses supported by the decision of the state. In the third instance, if there is no determination by a state authority which one is lawfully appointed, then they default to the governor. And the House chambers agree. When the two houses agree, then it goes to the governor of the state. But they tell us, even in Congress, they say it's not precisely clear whether the provision for resolving cases applies differently or instead when only one determination is present. Although this section is not free from doubt, its structure seems to indicate that when there is only one determination by the state made in a timely fashion, they say by this interpretation, the language providing that if the House and Senate split on this, then there's a process. And there is prior precedent for this. There appears to have been one example, 1961, when the governor of the state of Hawaii first certified electors of Nixon, and then during a subsequent recount, both slates of electors had met on the prescribed day in December, cast their votes, and transmitted them. And then they figured it out and they said, okay, the recount came back, the House accepted the result of the count, and it was agreed to by unanimous consent. So my point is, there's a lot of complexities into how the ballots come in. It's not just the governor signs off on it, they fax it over, and that's the end of the story. If there is a separate set of competing electors, then the person who is opening up the votes gets to decide which ones to honor, and can make the decision that I have two competing slates of electors from various states. How do we handle this? I can't handle this. I'm Mike Pence. I don't have authority to handle this. The House of Representatives now has to handle it. That's all. Not saying he overturns it and he says Arizona is gone, Arizona goes to Trump or anything like that. It's just a mechanism that triggers the rest of this process. And the Trump alternative electors created their alternative electors and submitted them. Both slates of electors have been prescribed and sent and cast. But now they're being prosecuted in Michigan for doing that. So all of this existed already in the law. It was complicated. So complicated, in fact, that they changed it. They passed the electoral... golly, what's going on here? No, we're not donating to your communist website. This is what they tell us about the Electoral Count Reform and Presidential Transition Improvement Act. This thing is a revision of the Electoral Count Act of 1887, passed in 2022. Isn't that convenient? It was passed and enacted and signed into law by Joe Biden, sponsored by Susan Collins. And what it did here is it clarified the role of the vice president. And they put in this, they said the bill clarifies that VP's role in the counting of the electoral votes is now solely ministerial. There's no power to determine, accept, reject, adjudicate, or resolve any of these disputes. They put it in there. Why? Because it wasn't clear. Because there was an argument that they could have done that. And so Mike Pence maybe did not want to do that. That's fine. That's his prerogative. He can make that conclusion. And many other people in his position probably would have done the same thing. But that doesn't mean that Trump told him to overturn the election. That's not the truth. And he's being dishonest when he's saying that Trump is asking him to override the Constitution. It's me or the Constitution. That's not accurate. There is a legitimate argument that this can be done in the Constitution. It was so legitimate that they changed the law to fix it. And so it's just a terrible statement from Mike Pence. I know what he's doing. His campaign is in the toilet, so he's got to shift into being the anti-Trump candidate, which is exactly what he will be. Now, Ron DeSantis also responded to this. Here was his statement that he posted yesterday. He said, as president, I will end the weaponization of government, replace the FBI director, and ensure a single standard of justice for all Americans. While I've seen reports, I've not read the indictment, which is lame. I do, though, believe we need to enact reform so that Americans have the right to remove cases from Washington, D.C. to their home districts, which is an interesting take. So if Trump's being prosecuted out of D.C., maybe he can remove that back to Florida where he gets a non-D.C. judge. Ron says, Washington, D.C. is a swamp, and it's unfair to have to stand trial before a jury that's reflective of the swamp mentality. One of the reasons our country is in decline is the politicization of the rule of law. No more excuses. I will end the weaponization of the federal government. So we got Ron DeSantis. We've got Mike Pence. Mike Pence picking a hard lane here. Moving forward for the foreseeable future will be the anti-Trump candidate. And we know he already testified in Jack Smith's probe. We'll see where this goes. All right, now, my friends, let's take a look at the Hunter Biden plea deal, because this puppy just dropped. The Hunter Biden scam plea deal and immunity deal have now been released on the court docket. We're going to go through them in detail. They tried to hide his immunity provision in this document, a diversion agreement. And remember, we've got two different documents that we covered when Judge Noriko was going through the change of plea proceedings. Hunter has 3 different criminal charges right now, 2 misdemeanor tax violations. Those are dealt with in this plea deal. That's where he's going to plead guilty, serve probation, and everything will be on his record, but it's a misdemeanor, so it's not that big of a deal. He'll still be able to vote and do all of the things. But he also had a felony gun charge, and that was going to be resolved via a diversion agreement. And the diversion agreement means that as long as Hunter does all the right things, the felony charge, which is the considerably more serious charge, it will be dismissed. He just has to not break the law again, essentially. Now, what's very interesting in this is we've got a misdemeanor tax set of charges and a gun charge. But in this diversion agreement, which is ultimately going to be dismissed, they say that the statement of facts in the plea deal is incorporated into the diversion agreement, and the incorporation of the statement of facts is immunized in the diversion agreement. This is very complicated and confusing. Yeah, it is. It's not supposed to work that way. But they did it because they're trying to jam this thing through. And the diversion agreement, because it's just an agreement between the prosecutor and the defendant, in this case, Biden's DOJ and Hunter Biden, they said that the judge couldn't even look at this. But guess what? The judge is the judge. And the judge said, you need to publish that over on the court docket because I would like to see it. And here is what the notice looks like. From Hunter Biden's lawyer, Christopher Clark, we heard a lot from him in court when he was screaming that this plea deal was not going to be accepted. One page, simple notice to the honorable judge, the incredible and very estimable Mary Ellen Norica out of Delaware. 2 cases, the gun crime and the tax crimes. He says, Your Honor, pursuant to your oral orders, we are filing the executed copy of the diversion agreement. And I can just feel the animosity from this lawyer. He did not want us to see this. He wanted this all to be just under seal and kept in the dark crevices in the dark corners of the DOJ in Biden and Merrick Garland's closet somewhere. But now we get to see it. And so let's take a look at it right now. This is the diversion deal. It's 10 pages. We have not seen this yet. We heard it discussed in the court record, but let's see where the government shoved his immunity deal and whether this resembles the old Epstein files. United States of America versus Robert Hunter Biden. This is the diversion agreement, and it is taking place out of Delaware. The parties, of course, we know, Hunter Biden and the government. Think of this like a contract between the federal government and Hunter that they all have to abide by. The terms of this agreement, 24 months. So if Hunter complies for 2 years, he's free. The 24 months is now known as the diversion period. They say Biden is going to waive the indictment. He doesn't need to be formally indicted. It's the firearms charge. We're just going to waive all of the criminal process and just get into it now. The U.S. agrees that if Biden complies with all of his respective obligations within 30 days after the expiration of the diversion period, we're going to file a motion to dismiss. All very normal. And I'm a huge fan of diversion agreements, by the way. Not for Hunter, but for most people. Usually diversion agreements are for a first offense person. You know, you've never been in trouble before. You had a little bit too much to drink when you were out, and so they're going to charge you with disorderly conduct. But if you go take an alcohol class, then we'll dismiss your disorderly conduct charge and everything goes away. It's a good deal for first-time offenders, for people who just kind of got a little bit of trouble. Not this. Biden agrees that the United States has probable cause to bring the charge and the information. He's not going to contest that. He says the charges are not frivolous or made in bad faith. Of course not. It's a minor gun charge. Biden also agrees that if at a future time the United States should move to dismiss this information, Biden would not be a prevailing party, and Biden waives any possible claim for attorney's fees and the other stuff. In other words, Biden's not going to have any claims when they ultimately dismiss the case. The government says, in light of the fact that Hunter has accepted responsibility for the actions referenced in the statement of facts, which is in a separate document, set forth, or maybe it's in this document, we'll see, and taking into consideration Biden's candid acknowledgement of his historical drug use as well as his current sobriety, and in consideration with other terms, the U.S. shall divert this matter pursuant to this document. They say Hunter agrees to waive all defenses based on the statute of limitations. It's the intent of this agreement for Hunter to agree to be the subject of Delaware's jurisdiction. Now, here's what Biden has to do. So sometimes let's say if you're in a domestic violence type of diversion deal, domestic violence is a very common diversion type of crime in Arizona. You have a couple, they get into an argument, there's some loud noises, neighbor calls the cops. What happened here? Somebody slammed a bottle down, the bottle broke. Okay, disorderly conduct, criminal damage, whatever. You guys got into a bad fight. How about you go take 32 classes of anger management and adult counseling? It's a lot. And in result of doing all of that, as long as you do it all, we'll dismiss the domestic violence charges against you. Happens all the time. But that's a big one. It's like a lot of classes, a lot of hours. Let's see what Hunter has to do. Here, it is understood under the terms of this agreement that Biden shall not purchase a firearm. So that's easy. Just don't buy a firearm. He's got Secret Service protection for the next couple of years anyways. Consent to a permanent entry in the background check NICS system pursuant to the United States laws. Give up all your interest in your firearm. All right. So the firearm that they got, forfeit to the firearm and ammo, gives it all up. No problem. That's it. Just don't break the law. Don't own a firearm. It's not even don't break the law. Just don't own a firearm. Have this on your record. They say without limiting or modifying the commitments during the diversion period, you're going to be subject to pretrial diversion supervision, meaning he's got to check in with probation. Now that could be kind of intense supervision, or it could be very minor. Could be basically unsupervised, right? It's supervised, but it's unsupervised. Continue or actively seek employment, right? He's an artist now, selling those paintings for like almost $1 million. Refrain from unlawfully consuming or possessing any controlled substance. Refrain from using alcohol for 2 years. Submit to, which maybe he's doing already, I don't know. Submit to substance abuse testing and participate in treatment. Fingerprinting by the FBI. Communicate your travel plans. That's it. Not much there. They say Biden acknowledges and agrees that the statement of facts is truthful and accurate. And Biden agrees that he shall not himself or through any agent repudiate this statement. Now, if there is a breach of this agreement, in a normal diversion agreement, let's say you are caught with cocaine or you're caught with prescription pills and you're a first-time offender. Happens all the time, all around this country. Some college kid or anybody, right, is caught with some prescription pills, not theirs. All right. What they'll have you do when you go into your diversion, they'll say, we're going to let you make this go away. You're going to do drug testing for 6 months or a year. And if you test clean, we're going to dismiss this felony charge against you for possession of narcotics. You say, okay, happy to do that. I don't want a possession of narcotics on my record. So you say, I'm going to sign this document. And in the document, what you do is you admit to the crime. All right. You say, yes, I agree to this term. You say, on this date in Arizona, I possessed a narcotic drug. I know I did it. It was in my pocket. It was in the car. It was wherever it is. Yes, I swear it. Signed. So when you get in trouble again, they just take your admission and they just say, well, you're guilty now, right? No options, no plea deals, nothing. You're guilty because you've given it to them. That's their leverage. It's like their collateral. They're going to let you go do diversion to try to get this thing dismissed. But if you fail, you're done. But what happens with Hunter? Are they going to do that for him? Biden agrees that a knowing failure to abide by the terms is going to constitute a breach. But if the United States, if the government believes that a breach has occurred, it may go to the judge. And this is what Judge Norika was so irritated about. She said, well, wait a minute. I'm not the person who decides probable cause on breaches or whether there are new criminal charges. They say upon notice to Biden, the United States may seek a determination on a preponderance of the evidence presented to the district judge. And she says, I'm not involved in this at all. You told me I'm not. Biden shall have the right to present evidence to rebut any claim at the proceeding. So it's almost like they're creating their own grand jury, right? This is something that would ordinarily happen just right through a grand jury or through an investigation by a detective who files a criminal complaint. If after that process, the judge overseeing the process makes a final determination that Biden committed a breach, the United States then may elect to do one of the following things, which is, it's like they are giving this guy everything. If you're a regular defendant and you test positive for your drug, for drugs or something like that, you're done. Here, they're going to just go talk to the judge about it. And Hunter has this remedy. Number one, they may give Hunter a specific time to correct the remedy the breach. Like what? If he tests positive, what's he going to do? Remedy two, the United States may prosecute Biden for any federal criminal violation as set forth here. So they're limiting themselves. If he lies for perjury, obstruction, then they could prosecute him for that. So it's either they go to the judge, the United States is not required to offer remedy one before proceeding to remedy two if they determine that the breach warrants termination of the agreement. Okay. So as I said, ordinarily, if you have a breach, Hunter tests positive for drugs or something like that, it would be an automatic failure. You're kicked out of diversion, go back for a pretrial conference, and you're done. You're basically screwed. But here, they may prosecute Biden for any federal criminal violation of which the United States has knowledge, including crimes related to the conduct in the statement of facts. And any such prosecution that is not time barred, notwithstanding the statute of limitations, if they warrant it. But then they have this paragraph, which is the non-prosecution agreement. Now, this is interesting. They say the United States agrees not to criminally prosecute Biden outside of the terms of this agreement for any federal crimes encompassed by the attached statement of facts, attached as Exhibit 1, filed this same day, filed as Exhibit 1 in the memo of the plea agreement. Okay, so that is a separate document. This agreement does not provide any protection against prosecution for any future conduct or his affiliated businesses. So this is pretty sneaky. So they say here, if there is a breach, and only if there is a breach, then the judge might determine that there is a breach. If the judge determines that there is a breach, then it's one of the two remedies. So it's not like they can just jump to prosecuting him immediately, is the way I'm reading this. But the judge determines there's a breach, then the United States prosecutes Hunter Biden. So it's like the court is acting as a failsafe. Rather than the government going through the grand jury process for something like this, they would go back to the court first here, then they could pursue one of those options. Which means it's like very unlikely that's going to happen. Okay, they're just not going to say there's a breach. It will never end up in front of a judge, and then there will never be the possibility that this happens. This is a breach contingent provision. Then when we zoom out on this, we get paragraph 15, which is the very broad immunity provision. The U.S. agrees not to criminally prosecute Biden outside of the terms of this agreement, meaning if there was a breach, they could, for any federal crimes encompassed as the statement of facts, which is monstrously huge. And it encompasses all sorts of other crimes, not tax crimes, not gun charges. They say all parties consent to the public disclosure of this agreement, which we just now got. They didn't disclose this to us when they filed the information, did you? You wanted to agree, you would agree to the disclosure after it was executed. You didn't publish this for us to see before you walked in there. They stipulate that the conduct does not constitute other relevant conduct for terms of prosecutions, no modifications of this deal. Signed, look at this. These are U.S. attorneys. These are the people who swear oaths and they get stupid badges and they say that no one's above the law all the time to us. Leo J. Weiss, Derek E. Hines, Special Assistant United States Attorneys, along with Benjamin L. Wallace, all concocted this scam deal, and they submitted it to their buddies, Hunter Biden and Christopher Clark. And then look, this is the attached statement of facts. This one's very short. This is just for the diversion. But they referenced, as we saw, the actual statement of facts in the memo in the plea deal. Right here, the memorandum of the plea agreement filed this same day. Well, we've got that one pulled up. This is the memo of the plea deal. Now, the judge made them read this whole stinking thing into the record because she was so disgusted with it. And when we scroll all the way down here, this is where they say that this is a parallel document to the diversion agreement. So the plea deal, which is for the tax crimes, also references the diversion agreement. And they're talking about their reductions. They recommend a sentence of probation. Hunter's going to pay a $50 special assessment fee. And this memorandum incorporates attachment A. And then here we see they signed off on it again. The same lawyers, the same people executing this disgusting deal. Now, this is the statement of facts. This is the exhibit that they referenced. So anything in this statement theoretically would have been immunized in the diversion agreement. And we read through all of this previously, but just the highlights. Everything basically from 2017 to 2019 would be covered. Millions of dollars from 2017. Following the death of his brother in 2015, all of these drug crimes. He started earning millions of dollars, finally published an all-telling memoir in 2021. So basically all of this conduct, everything, $666,666 gone, immunized. All the way through October, through Owasco, $1 million from Patrick Ho. Immunized, totally immune. 2.6 million from the CEO of this Chinese business, 38,000 from this person, 758,000. Married his current wife. They had domestic relations lawsuits. The list goes on and on, right? It's just like a kid at a candy store. Biden miscategorized certain personal expenses, 2.3 million here, 13,000 here, 2.6 million here, 4,000 due there. Tax years going all the way back to 2016 now. It's going to be included. It's like anything else you want to include, like this is your get out of free jail card, brother. So load it in here. And they did. And then they tucked it away at the bottom of the diversion deal and they tried to squeeze it through. But the judge didn't allow it to happen. And now it's been published for all of us to see. And this disgusting behavior, I'm sure, will continue on as they try to concoct an excuse to squeeze this through in some way or another. But we now have the documents on the record. And of course, we are going to continue to cover this. Thank you for joining as we do. All right. So very good stuff there. Very good stuff. And to wrap it up on the day, let us enjoy this delicious, very welcomed surprise. Devon Archer, the Biden crime family consigliere, now talks to Tucker Carlson. Archer just finished speaking with Congress. We learned from him that Joe Biden was on 20-plus speaker calls or meetings with Hunter, and many of those calls were with business associates. And Hunter is in big trouble now that one of his closest associates is speaking out. And as per usual, Tucker Carlson comes through with a major interview get. Was not expecting to see Devon Archer on our timeline today, shortly after his testimony. But Tucker talked to him, and Devon exposes more about the Biden crime family. Let's listen.
So you worked with Hunter Biden in a bunch of different businesses. What were the specific skills that he brought to clients?
Not much.
Well, at the end of the day, he had a career in Washington.
Yeah.
Graduated Yale Law School and had a very big network in
Thanks, Dad.
D.C. and
Thanks,
brought
Dad.
that know-how and understanding of D.C. and ultimately the Biden brand.
The know-how, so as far as I could tell, he wasn't doing legal work. I mean,
Correct.
he wasn't in the counsel's office at Burisma, right?
No.
So the network and the Biden brand sounds like the kind of key component of
Absolutely,
what
yeah.
he was bringing.
Yep.
Do you think that he would have been in those businesses, not having a business background, without his father being in a government position?
It's hard to speculate in those regards. I mean,
Yeah.
I think when we initially met and he talked about his advisory business, his business that needed to transition from lobbying to advisory and the interest in private equity, it seemed like a new and interesting network for us to expand our business. Whether he could have, been in that position, it's hard for me to speculate. But
Right.
obviously, the brand of Biden, adds a lot of power when your dad's the vice president.
For sure. And there was a time, maybe 10 years ago, when private equity, maybe like AI now, was just one of those terms people were throwing out. I'm in private equity.
Right.
But the mechanics, having done it, coming from a business background yourself, are kind of complex. Are
Absolutely.
they not?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's a complex business. Takes years of training. But again, the initial idea around the business, they were going to provide, the government insight and an additional network to raise capital and then, deal with regulatory issues that you might have at the corporate level.
Right.
Squeeze things
Regulatory
through.
issues.
Yeah, regulatory.
Okay, so that would be more his area.
Right. That would be his space.
Right.
That
But
Greece.
did he have a sophisticated understanding of regulation, do you think?
I think that he led a team that had a sophisticated.
Okay, because I lived in Washington a long time, around a lot of regulation. Also, a very complex area.
Absolutely. I think you got to be an expert in knowing the guy, and he was the guy that was the expert in knowing the guy.
He was an
This is interesting. I mean, they have a very good rapport. They're laughing. He seems like he's smiley. He seems comfortable. Like he's just ready to blow the lid off.
expert in knowing the guy.
Right.
And who was the guy he knew?
Well, he knew a lot of people, but obviously there was some familiar, his brother, his father, some of his father's siblings. So he knew a lot of people. And obviously I know you're pointing to, the father being the key relationship.
Well, no, I'm just trying to get a sense of, Washington's not a money town.
Right.
People aren't in business in Washington for the most part, and most people don't have business skills that I've noticed in 30 years of living there. So really the business of Washington is selling access. That's what it looked like to me.
Yes.
Not just under Biden, but like.
Yeah, no,
that's
I
what
think
people
that's,
do.
I think that's one of the core misconceptions. I mean, it seems like when understanding a regulatory environment means selling access at the end of the day. That's how I interpret it. And I think that's how most people in Wall Street, whether they admit it or not, interpret it.
Yeah. So we've got a complex business that intersects with government. We need a guy who knows it.
Right. How do I, deal with getting a guy a visa that needs to come over for a business deal?
Right.
Call our lobbyist that knows the guy in DHS or used to work in DHS or, in Customs and Border Patrol or the people at the embassy and state. They might be able to help. So there are very tactical elements that are regulatory and compliance and governance that you have to go through, and you got to know the guy that worked at the old agency that now has the lobbying firm that can go back to the agency and get things put to the front of the line.
Or just call
So
their
the reason
dad.
I'm asking this is
Hey, Dad,
because
how's the
it's
weather?
not to give the Bidens a pass, hardly, but when people say, well, there's some question about whether Hunter was trading on his father's name, if you live in Washington, that's the whole city right there.
Right. I think you know the answer to that. At the end of the day,
Right, so
he
anyone
had the
who's
best advantage to do that because of where he was. And, we thought that when we went into business, this was a great opportunity for us.
Of
So
course.
I get it.
Yes.
And you're not the only one who did that.
Right. There were a
And
lot of
Hunter
businesses.
Biden's not the only son of a famous government official who's done this, right? At all. But I just wonder, when you hear people say, well, it's kind of an open question.
Right.
About why they hired Hunter Biden, that's pretty disingenuous, no?
Right. I think at the end of it, so when you look at there are people that maybe were, sons or relatives or brother-in-laws of other high-ranking officials, but I think what we ran into and with what Hunter ran into was almost like an Icarus issue. So he got it was too close to the sun. It was too good to be true. And the connections were too close and the scrutiny too much.
Yes.
And it ended up destroying, it left a wake of a lot of destruction in businesses over a number of years.
So he's been indicted. He's been asked to self-surrender any day now to serve a prison sentence. And we've covered before that he sent an email to Hunter, a text message, saying, why are your dad's political appointees prosecuting me for these crimes? I was just trying to do what you guys wanted me to do. And Hunter basically said, you're a member of the Biden family. You are going to be protected by us. Stop letting those demons bounce around in your head and just get back to work, essentially. So this feels very differently. This feels like somebody who has turned. I mean, the emails made it feel like there was a strong familial relationship there, like they were almost brothers and had been for a long time. But now he's openly talking with Tucker about this. Feels like a pretty hard flip.
So how many, it's been reported and you have said that there were occasions when Joe Biden would call in with clients present on a speakerphone.
Right.
How many times do you think that happened?
I mean, over a 10-year partnership, I would, the number I'm going with is 20. That's probably the amount that I kind of reckon. Yeah, a lot, you could say.
So Joe Biden, who's very much a product of Washington, of course must have known that he was calling in to effectively a business meeting that his son was having. I mean, he must have understood that was kind of what his son was selling.
Well, it's hard for me to speculate on that.
But I guess my question, just to keep it to the facts, Joe Biden, then the sitting vice president, knew that there were Hunter's business associates in the room.
Yeah, I think I can definitively say at particular dinners or meetings, he knew there were business associates, and or if I was there, I was a business associate too.
Yeah.
So I think, or if any of the other colleagues from the DC office or the New York office were there. So yeah, at times there were. From the to be completely clear on the calls. I don't know if it was an orchestrated call in or not. It certainly was powerful though, because if you're sitting with a foreign business person and you hear the vice president's voice, that's prize enough. I mean,
that's a big deal.
That's pretty.
Let me get the vice president on the phone. I help with regulatory problems. You have a regulatory problem. Let me get my dad on the phone. Joe Biden picks up the phone. Those types of phone calls are very, very powerful, right? The person's time like that just doesn't hand out phone calls for free.
Been reported, and I know that it is true, that Hunter and his brother were very close to their dad.
Absolutely.
Which I think is great.
Yep.
I've got a lot of kids. I'm very close to them, talk to them every day.
Yeah.
Never called them on speaker during a business meeting. That's weird. You've got a lot of kids. You're close to them. Do you call them on speaker during business meetings?
Do I call?
I mean, what is that? A grown man calling his dad on a speakerphone during a business meeting?
Right. And to be clear, sometimes it was the call was coming in and the speaker would go on. So it's just the president. You have to be. I mean, you understand DC, right? So the power to have that access in that conversation, and it's not in a scheduled conference call, and it's a part of your family. That's
Big.
like the pinnacle of power in DC.
100%. I guess I'm pivoting against the lie that I'm hearing people tell with a straight face. Congressman Goldman, for example.
weather.
We don't really know what was going on. Really?
Just the weather.
You're taking a call from the vice president and you put it on speaker. It's not just, hey, Dad, I'm in a meeting with some buddies.
I'll call you back.
Right.
It's, let me put my dad, the vice president, on speaker.
That's enough.
Yep. In the rear view, it's an abuse of soft power, I'd say.
An abuse of soft power.
Nice, Tucker. Woo. Nice.
Interesting. When did you meet
Thank
Joe
you,
Biden?
Devon, for that. It wasn't
Joe Biden I met the first time probably at the 2000 convention. I think it was in LA, and then Boston was 2004. So those two times I probably shook hands as they made kind of the power circles around the. You've been to them through the skyboxes, and then following that, really when our partnership started in 2008, 2009ish, conversation started. That's when I re-met Hunter and actually had a sit down and meal with him, and talked about the transition from lobbying into strategic advisory, and then kind of some type of coalescence around having a private equity fund that would have this unique access and understanding of a regulatory environment in DC.
Again,
amazing. It's so corrupt. Perfect.
How many times do you think you met Joe Biden during the course of your relationship with Hunter?
How many times? I should have this off the top of my head since I've been asked so many times. Probably same thing, 20.
So I got one last question for you, and we'll do a much longer interview and get the entire story. But we found this letter, kind of amazing. It's from January 20th, 2011, which I think puts you in your late 30s, mid to late 30s. Right. Okay, so you're a younger man. This is from the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, to you personally, and it's personalized here at the bottom. Devon Archer, Rosemont Seneca Partners, that was your partnership with Hunter Biden in Georgetown. Dear Devon, I apologize for not getting a chance to talk to you at the luncheon yesterday. I was having trouble getting away from hosting President Hu Jintao, who's running China at that point.
Getting away from him, wow.
I hope I get a chance to see you again soon with Hunter. I hope you enjoyed lunch. Thanks for coming. Sincerely, Joseph R. Biden Jr. P.S. Handwritten, happy you guys are together. So there are many levels here. But here's the Vice President of the United States saying to you, a man in his mid-30s, who's not a government official, I'm sorry I was occupied with the guy who runs the world's largest country. I would much rather talk to you, and thank you. What was he thanking you for?
Well, first of all, it's a lovely letter, and it was
a nice letter from the
It's quite enthusiastic. It's a little weird, though, right?
Yeah, well, it was kind of the beginning of our partnership, and he was thanking me and thanking Hunter, I think, at the end of the day, for bringing this idea of this government regulatory strategic advisory business into the private equity world. And I think he was excited about the prospects for Hunter, and he was just thanking me. I think it was a nice gesture.
It was a nice, for sure.
For sure.
Very polite. It gets
letter,
a 10 on the etiquette scale. But he's a Vice President of the United States, and he's talking about foreign business deals with you and thanking you for that.
I think, again, it goes back to my earlier point I think I hit the jackpot in finding the regulatory environment or company that can navigate right to the top. But, obviously, as time was told, being a little bit too close to the sun ends up burning you.
For sure. And it did you, and you suffered greatly for it. And this is not a criticism of you. I would think as a business guy, you use every advantage. These are not business guys. This is the Vice President of the United States. He's not allowed to be working on businesses with foreign governments while he's Vice President. I don't think.
Not that I know of.
But here he is!
Right.
Amazing.
Right.
We'll be back. Devon Archer, thank you.
Thank you.
You'll hear people say the news is full of lies.
Tucker Carlson with a major get on that one. So my friends, make sure you are following Tucker Carlson on Twitter on that one, giving it a like, giving it a watch, giving it a retweet, a repost. And there will be more. Part 1, he said there's going to be a longer interview. They're going to sit down and get into it further. So absolutely amazing, and something I was not expecting at all. I was actually really concerned whether Devon Archer was going to say anything, whether he was going to talk at all. And he did show up. We got a little bit of conflicting stories from his testimony yesterday. Dan Goldman tried to come out and narrative set this entire story. And they were talking about the weather. He just loves his son, just random phone calls. And then Devon suddenly shows up on Tucker Carlson. And I'm sure there will be much more to be revealed here. And so the box of Pandora is now being opened up. We've got longtime Biden crime family business associates sitting down with Tucker. And my friends, we're going to continue to cover it as this develops. And so thank you for following. Thank you for subscribing and joining us. We look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends. Well, that was it for us on the day. We covered Devon Archer, which was a lot of fun. We got the scam immunity provision, which has now been released. We know that Mike Pence is being dishonest about his framing on this whole conversation about the Constitution, what he was allowed to do in the Senate. Trump and his defense lawyers hit back. Rudy's fired up about free speech. And we've got Trump issuing a video message. We learn more about Judge Tanya S. Chutkan, who is now going to be hearing the case in the J6 prosecution brought by Jack Smith. And that, my friends, is it for us on the day. But now, let's hear from you and see what you have to say about this. Of course, I very much appreciate all your lovely and amazing support over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com on YouTube and on Rumble and on the X And today we've got Curtis Bartle starting us off. Thank you, Curtis. With 5 new membos in the house. We've got Kitchen Mortician, who is joining us. Welcome to the Kitchen Mortician. We've got Gypsy, Diane B, Vin Yoda, and Mary Jo, all in the house. And thank you to Curtis Bartle for sending that one in. We got Voice. Oh my goodness, Voice of the People. 10 new membos, baby. And so our new YouTube membos, make sure you grab the Telegram link because we are going over to our members only after party after the show. And we would love to see you there. Honey Bear, Jay Thomas, Deborah E, David M, Ron Zimmerman. We got Faye Sight, we got Nick, Peng, RMF, and Zach Guy. All coming in courtesy of Voice of the People. Welcome to our amazing new members. And we'll be back here actually tomorrow we're not going to have a members only morning stream. But we'll see you on Friday. I forgot to mention that. Tomorrow there will not be a members only morning stream. I've got some morning business to attend to. But we'll be back on Friday to get into it all. So we'll see you then. Hey, Spuds is here. Says, will the new Chinese virus in Guam tip it over per Hank Johnson? You mean like capsize? Like could Guam capsize? It could. If there's too much virus particle, the whole country, the whole island could capsize. It's a big problem. Hank Johnson told us about that. Hey, thanks, Spuds. Tara says, what did the state whisper? I didn't hear it. I think Tara was saying, this was about our morning stream with George Allen Kelly. Also, will you send a clip of the Pence Fox interview that I told you about last week, his January 421 speech? I probably won't go dig it up. If I covered it, it's on the mind map. And all the clips that we cover are all available on the mind map, but I'm not sure what that is. Did you send it to me, Tara? Let's chat offline about that clip. We had another one. We got Horatio in the house. It says, hello, my dear friends. Hello, my dear friends. Hello, Horatio. Thanks for being here, my friend, and thank you for the support. We got David Nelson says, thanks for the entertainment from the 199 Legion. I don't know. Shout out. I don't know what that is. But thanks for being here, David. And thanks for the emoji sunglasses. I appreciate your support. Thanks for that. A Bad Poet says, history can tell a lot. Ask Tony Bobulinski. We talked about Tony Bobulinski. Very credible person. Came out with a ton of emails and told us everything we needed to know about the Biden crime family, but then they just ignored him because it was bad for their political candidate. Thank you, A Bad Poet. We've got Da Freak has been a member for 5 months. Da Freak, thank you for joining us. Things are serious. 5 months is, things are getting pretty serious. Thanks for discerning reality and correctly and with competence. Thank you, Da Freak. I think some people might debate that one, but I appreciate your support. Jameson says DOJ facts are stretched as much as Lizzo's spandex. It's true. That's almost like hard to even wrap your head around. Get it? It's so big, it's hard to wrap your head around. All right, so thank you, Jameson. We got Polly Shortcut says, you should have a convo with MonkeyWorks on YouTube. He tracks flights and he knew the Fed lawyers were moving on this a year ago. What's the chance the Supreme Court will get involved sooner rather than later? So they'd have to appeal to the Supreme Court. I don't think that they're going to unilaterally step in on any of this stuff. Low. I'd say it's low that they're going to step in. Trump might appeal. I think the likelihood of Trump appealing directly to the Supreme Court is high. Whether they accept it or not is a different story. But MonkeyWorks, I'll check out his channel. I'm not familiar with his work, but I'm sure it's great. Tracks flights, knew the Fed lawyers were moving in a year ago. So shout out to MonkeyWorks out there. And thanks, Polly, for plugging another creator on here. I appreciate that. Very nice. We got another one. We got this one from Brian. It says, under 18 U.S. Code 241, Trump is facing death, from Brian Reinhart. Thanks, Brian. Been a member for 6 months, Brian. That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I think, did Trump post something about that? I think that there was an alert about that they might be asking for the death penalty. Why wouldn't they? Whack jobs. Karen, What's up, Karen Andrews? Says no sedition charge till the next Biden crime shoe drop. That could be true. We could come here and eat our words later. Well, they finally charged him with sedition. But why didn't they do it the first time? And it's going to feel like, okay, you had to do it with the superseding indictment after the first one. It's just, like every time they do it, it just loses oomph to it. Art Taylor's over on Locals says, look at Trump, go to jail. Don't look at the latest Tucker video from Art Taylor. It's too late for that one. We already did it. A Bad Poet says, how much tax money has been given to government lawyers? A lot. And Jack Smith's burn rate's about $1 million a month. $1 million a month. So about 6 million. Voice of the People says gas prices are skyrocketing again. Last Wednesday was $3.17 for me. Today, $3.45. We have used up all the strategic petroleum reserve that Biden released months ago. Yeah, I've seen those prices go up. And I see news stories about them. I saw a good cameraman who panned over to the actual dollar signs. Somebody was giving a speech. We're reducing gas prices. He's like, oh, really? Look over here, $4.99. It's pretty funny. Yeah, and Rocky Waters laughing at you from California. $3.17, he's laughing in California right now. What's it, $4.99 there? I would imagine. We've got Rocky Water. Hey, this one came in from First Amendment. It says, take your letter and shove it. Yeah, that's how I feel. That's what Kaitlin Collins was saying. She's like, well, this person and this person and this person and this person. We go, we don't care about your stupid lists. Come up with a list of what? 20,000 climate change deniers or Trump, 20,000 so-called, U.S. attorneys. Nobody cares. Take your letter and put it in the shredder. Rocky Waters in the house says, here's to John Lauro. Cheers to John Lauro. He did a good job today. Cheers to John. Crash to Contraries in the house says, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong. There are conspirators 1 through 6, yet none of them have been indicted yet, right? Correct. Yes, correct. As far as we know. Just Trump. The others will probably come. I got to imagine they come. Although I've seen some people saying that they don't think maybe that they will come because it would cause a lot of additional complexity in the case. But they named them as co-conspirators. So like if these people are really doing justice, there should be some consistency. If the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers are going to be held in custody for seditious conspiracy and Trump's not, we have a contradiction, don't we? How do we resolve that? The right way? Dismiss all of the other seditious conspiracy charges or charge Trump. And then we'll see the inconsistency in his bond and release conditions. Either way, it's going to continue to expose what a joke this whole thing is. The contradictions are going to continue to pile up. P-Dub Designs is in the house. What's up, P-Dub? He says his standard disqualifies himself. He should understand that by following his false constitution and process, he failed to follow the Constitution, putting his personal values above it. Disqualified. Yeah, I don't, we were pretty accommodating with Mike Pence here for a long time. I would be okay with Mike Pence if he said, it was my judgment. It was my judgment that I couldn't do this thing. And he sometimes says that, but he has now been saying the opposite of that. He's now saying the Constitution doesn't allow me to do the thing. And that's not, they changed everything. I mean, they changed the Electoral Count Act. So I'm fine with somebody standing behind their decision and their judgment. That's fine. But to blame, but to take it out of his control is what kind of grosses me out. He's like, I couldn't do it. Constitution. No. That's your opinion on that. When you say that you couldn't do it, now you're implying that Trump was asking you to break the Constitution. And so you don't get to say that at Trump's expense. Sorry. You could say that it's my judgment, and I'm fine with that. Okay, fine. Maybe people disagree with his judgment. Maybe you don't. But to then turn around and blame Trump and say Trump committed some crime because he asked me to do something illegal is like, all right, that's enough. Sorry. Waffles for the People says, when you play a video, the volume drops like crazy. So that might have been on the one. So hopefully that's not on every video, but there was definitely one video that was bad audio. So this video from this video here that we played had bad audio. I caught that one too. It changed about 4 times. But that was CNN. They were changing the mic, I think. Hopefully it's not bad on all of the other videos, but I'll keep my eye out on it. And Waffles, thank you for being a member for 3 months. That's 1/3 of a baby. All right. We've got Horatio Spinelli says, long live Anonymous. I always say nice things about Anonymous and those people over at the 4chan. That hacker is a real nice guy. Crash to Contrary says, Mike essentially Pence. His new name. That's not that great of a name. Mike essentially Pence. I mean, it's great. It's a great name. I just don't think he would like it. Like, I don't think he'd be like, essentially, that's my middle name. You know, I don't think he'd be one of those guys. John Allen is in the house. Thanks, John. Says, Rob, if Trump wins, he needs to hire you as a PR lawyer to push constitutional law to be followed. You're so good at explaining all of it. Thanks, John. I think he should too. And he should probably put me on the same team as Alina Abba, you know, and we could just work on a bunch of cases and constitutional issues together, you know, get to the bottom of all these complicated processes. You know, she's smart, man. And I think we could probably have some successful endeavors together. All right. Thanks, John. We had this one. I don't know what that is. This one came in from John Allen, says, come on, V, you need to replace the Twitter bird with an X. Get back to work, man. Jameson's in the house, says, what was DOJ smoking when they drafted the Biden doc? I don't know. Probably, I don't know, whatever they brought in with that dime bag. You know, who knows what's going on at the White House? A lot of drugs over there. Rocky Waters says, I'm not a lawyer guy, but seems diversion agreements parallel prosecutorial discretion. Yeah, kind of. I mean, yeah, a prosecutor does have the discretion to grant them or not. Seems to fall into the so subjective that it begs for abuse category to me. Did a person break the law? Yes or no? The discretion comes in its sentencing by the judge. No? Yeah, at times. So yeah, it does. So think about, this is not a good example of a diversion case because there's so much criminality involved in Hunter's case. But think of a normal diversion for just a normal, regular, everyday citizen, right? Think about, like, a lot of people in college would get a diversion. They go to college, they go out to Mill Avenue in Tempe, they have a little too much to drink, and they get in trouble, whatever the crime is. And then, you know, rather than putting them through a big, long, drawn-out criminal process, we just say, hey, look, you're a first-time offender, no real victims in this case. You're going to go take an adult anger management class, okay? You're going to come back here, and you can dispose of the case in 30 days, in and out. So it saves a lot of resources. It's very good for the defendant. Oftentimes it actually works, right? People go, oh man, like I got my one get out of jail free card. It's a 22-year-old kid. It's like a good situation. This one doesn't feel right because it's not right, because they're including a diversion for somebody who was knowingly and actively, maliciously engaging in criminality at the expense of everybody else. It was, a horrific sequence of crimes and a lot of abuse that we've all seen. So it doesn't feel right in his case, but oftentimes it can work. And like, they don't offer diversion for murder, or if you have an actual victim, with a broken bone, or you did something that was a crime of moral turpitude or something, they're not going to let you out on those. A Bad Poet says, never fear, Hunty, 2024 is pardon season. Poof. Just wait for the whole thing to get evaporated. A Bad Poet says, a father's love. Trump is going to pardon himself. Yeah, he can walk right in, he can win, and then he can pardon himself of all of these crimes. It would be epic, and we're looking forward to it. First Amendment says, will the prosecutors be punished? I don't think so. I think they'll probably get promoted. Probably get a gig on CNN. They'll get a cushy job somewhere at a DC law firm that's full of liberals. They'll go work with Michael Sussman and Mark Elias. or they'll get appointed to U.S. attorney, or maybe they'll be made Secretary of State. Linda Ramey says Jim Jordan's letter, was about paragraph 14 when it was 15. 15 was inserted the day before court. Great job. Thanks, Linda. Yeah, did Jordan mention paragraph 14? Is that right? I think there was a typo in that document too. Hey, R. Taylor says, yeah, and just think, Tuck is just getting started. Yeah, that was a great interview get. How did they get Devon Archer to go talk to them? Like, that's incredible. It's really amazing. Wims, what's up, Wims? Wims is in the house on local, says, I'm not surprised. The Bidens let this so-called family take all the heat. I feel that too, Wims. When we were reading through that text message with Hunter and Devon, I felt just gross after that. It felt like Hunter was talking to somebody who was overly invested, totally enamored with his position with this family, probably believed a lot of the love, probably been brought into the fold. It felt like they were very much exploiting him. Like, he's going to prison. He just got indicted, and Hunter's like, easy, bro. Don't talk to me like that. We're going to take care of you. And he's like, yeah, you're right. It actually felt pathetic, and it makes your heart break a little bit. Not that he's somebody that deserves a lot of sympathy. He was involved with these people for however long. But it's one powerful family of bullies and criminals exploiting the less powerful. And I hate bullies, man. I can't stand them. And that's what these people are. So thank you for that, Wims. I think you're right. They exploit other people. They promise them all the goods, and they let them take the fall. It's disgusting behavior. Isaac Bowles says, now I understand the chants against the former vice president. Yeah, like let's go Brandon and those types of things. Yeah, a lot of people have a feeling, no doubt. We got General Kale. What's up, General Kale? Thank you for this one. Says, the GOP are like the Washington Generals. They put on a show, make it look like a game, but they're only there so the Globetrotters can dunk on them. The ending is never in doubt. Professional losers, from General Kale. Man, there's some good and horrific truth to that. I mean, it's a painful one because it's true. It's like, what did the Republicans do with the debt deal? Have you seen how much money they're spending? And we just got downgraded from AAA to A+, AA+. They are spending so much money, and the Republicans were like, here you go. Here's the checkbook. You want us to sign a couple checks for you? Everywhere you turn, they just roll over. And maybe they'll do it this time too. Certainly not, rallying the troops to defend Trump the way I'd like to see. Where's Mitch McConnell? Where's Mitt Romney? All these people want to see Trump taken out just like the rest of them. Literally just like the Democrats. Gross behavior. Oh my goodness, look who it is. It's Beth Coddington, farmer's daughter, in the house with a very generous dono, as per usual. Thank you, Beth. So nice to see you. Says, hey, Sweetums, miss you all. I've been keeping busy in the early evenings these days. I'll be catching you more again. Yes, I wanted to say hi and show support and love. I have an unrelated question. Thoughts on Tucker's interview with Andrew Tate? First of all, Beth, it's great to see you. Hope you're doing well. We miss you when you're not here. Farmer's daughter's in the house. We're glad that you're here with a very generous dono. Beth, you're always so nice to me. Thank you for that. So on Tucker's interview, I watched, I don't know how much of it. I didn't watch the full thing. It was like 3 hours. I watched a bit about it. I thought, I guess, did I have any takeaways on it? I'll have to think about that one, Farmer's Daughter. I'll have to put some thought into that. I don't know that I had any takeaways on it. I think I was just listening to it more. When I listen to interviews like that, I always like, as much as they talk about the substance, whatever the conversation is, they talk about his charges and what's going on. That's all fine. But I'm always curious about the dynamic between the two people who are having the conversation, because we've got some pretty big personalities in that room. We've got Tucker, who's top alpha. We've got Andrew Tate, who's in that same league, and they are in a room together. And it's always interesting to watch the personal dynamics. Is what I'm more interested in, how the conversation will go from like a little bit awkward and uncomfortable, and then they establish a rhythm and a cadence So I'm kind of watching the performance on that. How is Tucker performing for the cameras? How is Andrew Tate performing for the cameras? I think that probably a lot of the conversation there is, you know, I don't know how, it's like conversation almost for sport. Like, I'm not sure that I'm going to be taking away any legal analysis on Andrew Tate's case from his conversation. So it's interesting. I don't know. I think I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are and whether I should finish the rest of the interview, I guess is my question on it. I don't think I watched the full thing. I do think it was quite a long one. But, man, I've been loving Tucker's work in general. I watched Tucker's conversation with Ice Cube, which I thought was great. It's like he's doing all of these great interviews. Like he's talking with Ice Cube, and Ice Cube is like on the right team. And then he's talking with Andrew Tate, and he's, you know, bringing that audience into the fold. And then he's talking with Devon Archer. It's like, man, he's like on track, man. He's nothing but net. He just keeps swishing and swishing and swishing. And it's like very impressive. Tucker's an inspirational guy to watch what he's built and to watch how he navigates these things. And I've always been inspired by Tucker because he always laughs at everybody. And these people will come at him and he just laughs at him. Like, what are you so riled up about? What are you all freaked out about? Calm down, relax. And it's always, I think, something that has been a thorn in their side. These people, if you don't agree that COVID is the end of the whole planet, if you don't agree with them that January 6th was the end of America or that climate change is going to wreck us all, they hate it. If you just laugh at them when no, we're all going to, okay, whatever. You kind of mock them and get rid of them. And Tucker is the master at that. I mean, I don't think I've seen anybody ever do it better than him. And it irks them so badly. So then when he joins forces with Andrew Tate and then, you know, now Devon Archer, it's like they must be so irritated. Like let's just put it in perspective. They just fired Tucker Carlson, okay? They just got him off of Fox News so that he couldn't be a thorn in their side for this next election. Finally, he's gone. Fox News is ours again. And then Tucker picks out Devon Archer, who just testified in front of Congress the day after Trump gets indicted, and he brings him on his show and he releases it for all of us to see. It's like they must be just furious. We can't get rid of this guy. Everything we keep trying to do, he just keeps popping back up. So I'm in favor of it. I think we need to have more conversations. I think Tucker having a conversation with Tate's great. I didn't listen to the full thing, but I think that there's probably many, many people who did, and that introduces them to Tucker. And that's great. I want more people to understand the thinking and the political process on our side of the aisle. And so I'm very grateful for Tucker's work. I'm glad that he's back. You know, other people, sometimes people get hit and they don't come back up. Like other people have been taken off the air and where are they, right? Where they just kind of go somewhere and they're just like gone. They're like over. And I'm glad. I was very concerned about that with Tucker, and he's almost thriving. He's almost better than ever before. So super cool. Beth, amazing to see you. Thank you so much for stopping by. Hope you're well. Hope you're doing great. And I hope we see more of you. So thanks for being here. We got Trust 2 Kids says, thanks for playing the Tucker Archer Icarus interview, Rob. Thanks, Trust. Yeah, you know, normally I don't like to play like full interviews, but we had no choice on that one. You know, sorry, Tucker. If you're mad at me, I hope you forgive me at some point. All right. Here's another one from Rocky Water. Says, another good one. Thanks for what you do, Rob. I don't think I learned anything really new from the Archer interview in terms of facts. He seemed conspicuously vague to me. Yeah. In my conspiracy theory mind, I'm wondering if Devon's not angling for a 2024 pardon or something. He is awaiting sentencing after all. Wondering your thoughts. So, do you mean a pardon from Biden or a pardon from Trump? I mean, if he's waiting for a pardon from Biden, I don't know that he's going to get one if he's now blasting Biden. Or is your point maybe that he is trying to sell something so that Trump would give him a pardon? In other words, he's being bought with a pardon. He's saying stuff that's going to be bad for Biden because he is endeavoring that Trump is going to pardon him in the future. I think they could be possibilities. I mean, I think Devon's statements, his testimony has been pretty consistent. We would start looking for inconsistencies in his statement. He's got proximity. He's got, motive. He's got opportunity. He was with the Biden family. So I think I think he's probably credible, but I can understand your position in that maybe maybe there's something more there. The fact that he showed up on Tucker really put to bed a lot of my concerns. I was worried that maybe he would go in and tell Congress the opposite of what they wanted to hear. And now he's on Tucker. So we'll continue to keep our eye on him. I mean, he's certainly somebody who was involved with them for decades. And we can't lose sight of that as well. So thank you, Rocky. Geegum Geegum is in the house. Says, hey, Rob, you better mention Uncle Shane, population control and everything. He says, it's been over 9 months and you haven't mentioned me. I'm starting to think you don't want to see your baby, Rob. We had a baby? If we had a baby, Uncle Shane, I don't want to see it. I don't. You're right. Wims is here. Says, my dad works for a major pipeline and it's all optics. It's all optics. I believe that. I believe that. My dad works for a major pipeline and it's all optics. So do you mean pipeline like the optics of regulation? Regulation and the mechanics of how it works? Numbers fudged, everything gets squeezed through? Sounds about right. Geegum, thank you for your tip. I didn't mean to blow by it. Uncle Shane, I do love you very much. We had this one, another one from Geegum, says, anyways, I should have said, child support and everything. I don't know how that works. I think I'm going to take the Joe Biden approach on this one and just not recognize whatever Uncle Shane and I have going on. We're just not going to recognize it until the polls say we should. Jameson is here, says January 6th is American Tiananmen Square, just no tanks. Yeah, I think that's a good analogy. Yeah, our bureaucratic, disgusting, politically charged government caused something to happen at the expense of the citizenry. Yeah. A bad poet says, Trump files a motion to dismiss at the magistrate, pre-amend poop emoji. Trump files a motion to dismiss. I don't think he's going to file one tomorrow. He'll just do the arraignment. We'll see one come, though. We want to get discovery and some more facts before we file a motion to dismiss. But we'll see. We've got another one that came in. Oh, my screen just jumped. Thank you to A Bad Poet for that one. And Isaac Bowles says, we need to set Robert and Haba on a date. They'd make beautiful babies together. That's true. Now, I would acknowledge that child. That is true. No problem on that kid. But, alas, I think somebody told me she's married. Ugh! All right. We got Indoctrination. Says they said, get your own platform. And that's exactly what we did. Now they can't ignore the no longer silent majority. Good comment. Yeah, Elon had to drop $45 billion to go buy the platform. And now Tucker has a voice. And that is so great. And Devon Archer's on there and he has a place to talk. And we can all re-exit to our little heart's desire. And so thank you, Indoctrination. Great comment. Just My Opinion, been a member for 7 months, says good show. Thank you, Just My Opinion. I value your opinion, especially when you say it's a good show. And thanks for being a member. Certainly appreciate that very, very much. All right, let's say hello to our friends over on X before we wrap it up on the day. And we're going to take a look at some of these comments before we go over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our after party. And we'll probably have to locals start a new thread because we're getting close on time. Yeah, we'll start a new thread because we're a little bit tight on time. But over on Twitter, we've got some good comments. We've got Vienti Kisses here. Says, realistically, all they've done at this point is proven there was fraud that shifted the election. You don't know this much spaghetti. You don't throw this much spaghetti at the wall otherwise. Says, just remember all the morons and liars with their college degrees shows the educational system works exactly as intended. Autodidactism. And says, I'm pretty sure Doofy from the Scary Movie could do a better job than Jack Smith. Doofy? Goofy? James Pepper is here. Vientikis says, a law that exists for show and ceremony. What a quaint idea. I wouldn't say they changed the law. They didn't change the Constitution. Rob, do they still have accelerated rehabilitation? I don't know. I don't know. It depends what type of rehabilitation you're talking about. Like for a shoulder or for like alcohol. Lee says, Rob, I'm putting your name out on X, rounding up people to follow you, just trying to give them, hey, thank you, Lise. Also got the mind map. Very cool. Very cool. Justy says, love the Tucker interview. TJ King says, when Smith says J6 and the Capitol Police are heroes and the best of us, not forgetting Agent Byrd, Ashley Babbitt's murderers, and the officers who beat Roseanne Boylan. It's like forgetting Chauvin and saying the MPD are heroes. Yeah, they just pick what they want. They just pick and choose. Field of Greens from Supersonic Gamer. Just he says, is the Kelly trial going to be televised? Yeah, George Allen Kelly, it should be. Everything so far has been televised. And we've got Brian Reinhart, omnipotent being. Sonia's in the house. Good to see you, Sonia. Shared this one. Yeah, we got some good comments over there on the Twitters. And so, my friends, if you'd love to follow us on Twitter and go follow some other watchers on Twitter, great place to do it. Rob Govea, ESQ, so that you can connect with other fellow people interested in what is happening here. And it's a great way to do that over on Twitter. But, all right, my friends, that is it for us on the day. We got one final comment from Mike Mack. Says, before testifying, Devon goes to country club. After, you're gonna eat your cornbread? Oh gosh. So saying basically he's going to prison. Before testifying, Devon goes to the country club. After testifying, he's in prison. Is basically where that's going from Mike Mack over on YouTube. And thank you, Mike, for that very generous dono. And thank you, everybody, for sending all of those in. Very much appreciated. And so that is it for us on the day. We are going to go over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our members only after party. YouTube friends, don't forget to join us on Telegram. You can download the Telegram link from the community tab section on YouTube. Also, our brand new website, robertgovea.com, where you can go and get all of the reports on all of the content, all of the videos that we post here on the reports section, where you can read more about the video or watch the video and get up to speed on all of the latest activities. You can also sign up for the mind map. Just click here and you can get access to this entire mind map and get the PDFs and all the documents that you might need. We also want to say thanks to our friends at fieldofgreens.com. Make sure you get your Field of Greens at fieldofgreens.com and use code Robert when you check out so that you can save those 15%. Let's also say thanks to the mods and the meme smiths who mod down the fort for us and keep things nice and orderly here. Our friend Vientikis Prime, K Bean, Just Cause in the house, Playin' Hooky, Ronnie, we got Zulu, Beyond Geo Stars, Zach Nichols, John Allen, Janek 909, Dog Digger, and Donut Mind Me, along with our friend John McGarvey, Sleepy Dogly, Geegum Geegum, and Nathan N810 in the house. We appreciate everybody who helps to keep this show nice and orderly, keep the trains on the tracks. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. And so we are going to come back here tomorrow to do the same thing all over again. And I hope to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. See you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.